Entering the eatery, a woman with the energy of a full-blown Karen walked in like she owned the place. She acted like she was part of the family, claimed she was the owner's wife. But here's the thing. I'm 18 years old, and I'm actually married to the owner's daughter. My parents run this place, a small, cozy restaurant with a little bit of everything. Sandwiches, sweets, cakes, you name it. We even have a fun nickname for it, Jim's. I usually help out there when I'm not hanging out with my buddies. The job's simple, and the money I earn, especially on weekends, gives me a little extra to treat my friends or buy something fun. It also kind of motivates my friends to do the same. Most of them know I'm the owner's son, and honestly, so do most of the regulars. My parents aren't just the owners, they work hard, side by side with the staff. But you'd be surprised how many customers treat them like they're just hired help. This woman, though, I had never seen her before. She looked like she could have been anywhere between 30 and 45, and she had a child with her. That kid was wild, looked to be around 13 years old, maybe younger. Since it was the weekend, the place was a little slower than usual. I remember she was told to wait on the side chairs for about 20 minutes before she got seated. Eventually, she took her seat at a prepared table, and I came over to take her order. I don't remember exactly what she asked for. Some kind of sandwich, I think. I walked back to the kitchen to put it in, and then I waited by the register in case any other customers needed help. That's when I noticed her kid running around like a tornado, yelling, bumping into other customers, even stepping near people's food. The woman, of course, was deep in a phone call and didn't care at all. I was annoyed, really annoyed. So, when the kid came zooming past me again, I gently stopped him and said in a calm voice, "Hey, you shouldn't be running around in a restaurant. It's dangerous." He screamed and bolted straight back to his mother, who immediately stood up and stomped over to me like I'd just committed a crime. "How dare you!" she shrieked. "You touch my child! He was just running around having fun!" I tried to explain, "Ma'am, he was bumping into other people and nearly knocked over a tray." "He's a child! He can do whatever he wants!" "Not here, ma'am. Not on my watch." That's when she narrowed her eyes and pulled out the big guns. "Oh, you little brat. Do you even know who I am? I'm the owner's wife. You've made a huge mistake. You'll be lucky if you're not fired today." I blinked. Did she really just say that? Now, I've heard all sorts of bold claims, but this one was up there. And the funniest part? She said it with such confidence, like she really believed it would scare me into silence. But no, I wasn't playing along. I kept calm. "Ma'am, I think you're mistaken. I'm the son of the actual owners." She ignored me and cut me off again. "I know the owner personally. His name is Joe." That caught me a bit off guard. She did know my dad's name. But again, it's not like his name isn't on the front of the building. People see it all the time, and we do delivery, so his number is listed too. "I'm sorry if I came off too harsh," I said, "but your son was disturbing other customers. I didn't mean to upset you." "Oh no," she said, fuming. "You're finished. You'll never work here again. Just wait until I talk to my husband." In my head, I was cracking up. She clearly had no idea. I imagined maybe she brought along a sister or a friend and thought she could play pretend in front of them to impress someone. Before I could say anything else, she stormed up to the counter, demanding to speak with the manager. My dad was nearby and walked over. "Excuse me," she snapped, pointing at me. "This employee has been threatening my child. I want him fired, immediately." My dad looked over at me, then calmly back at her. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, "but I can't fire him without cause. He's allowed to speak up if a child is causing a scene." She glared at him. "Do you even know who you're talking to? My husband owns this place." Dad smiled, a big, wide grin. "Yes, I do." "Then why are you letting this boy get away with it?" My dad chuckled. "Because that boy is my son, and I am the owner." Her face turned a strange shade of pale, like all the color had drained out in an instant. It was as if someone unplugged her from the wall. My dad's voice stayed calm, but his words were sharp. "You are not my wife, and you have no right to speak to my staff, especially my family, that way." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For a second, she looked like she might cry or scream, maybe both. My dad looked at her receipt. "Would you like a refund?" That's when she completely lost it. She yelled that we didn't know who we were messing with, that we'd regret this, and that she was going to call someone to deal with us. She stormed out with her son, who was now crying loudly. Honestly, I felt bad for the kid, but not for her. The best part? Later that evening, she actually tried calling the number posted on our delivery board outside the restaurant. And who answered? My dad. "Hello, this is Joe, owner of Jim's. How can I help you?" Silence. Then she stuttered out a half introduction before realizing she'd just called the same man she'd insulted earlier. My dad calmly told her, "Yes, I am the owner. And no, we don't tolerate that kind of behavior toward our staff or our family." After that phone call with my dad, I figured we'd seen the last of her. But with people like that, it's rarely the end. They don't go quietly, they just regroup and come back louder. Sure enough, a few days later, she showed up again. This time she wasn't alone. She brought another woman with her, someone who looked a little younger and more dressed up. Maybe a sister, maybe just a friend who didn't know better. But from the look on their faces, they came in ready for a scene. I was working the front, and I recognized her the moment she walked through the door. Her eyes met mine, and she gave me this smug little smirk like she was ready to play round two. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and went about my work. She walked right up to the counter and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm here to speak to the real owner this time. I don't want any of the staff covering for that rude boy again." I raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, the owner is my father, and he's busy at the moment." She waved her hand dismissively. "No, not that man. The real owner, the one who actually makes the decisions." At this point, even some of the other customers started looking over. I calmly replied, "That would still be my dad, Joe. He's the one who took your phone call the other day." That shut her up for about 2 seconds, until her friend leaned in and asked her something in a whisper. Then suddenly, Karen turned back toward me and said, "We'll wait. We have an important matter to discuss. It's about the treatment we received and the disgraceful behavior of one of your workers." Her friend added, "Yeah, and we heard from someone that the way this place is run could be a lawsuit waiting to happen." That was new. Now they were trying the legal threat angle. I just nodded it and went to the back to get my dad. He came out, calm as ever, wiping his hands on a towel. "Yes, ladies?" he asked, voice friendly but firm. Karen immediately launched into a speech about how she had been mistreated, how her son had been manhandled, and how the environment was toxic. She demanded a formal apology and disciplinary action against me. My dad listened quietly, didn't interrupt, just let her talk. When she finally paused to take a breath, he said, "Ma'am, I was here that day. I saw what happened, and we have cameras that recorded everything. Would you like to review the footage together?" Her face tightened. "That won't be necessary." "I think it might be," my dad replied. The color drained from her cheeks again. Her friend shifted uncomfortably beside her. "I understand you're upset," he continued, "but you accused my son, who is also my employee, of something he didn't do. You then claimed to be my wife, and now you're making legal threats in front of customers." She opened her mouth, but again, nothing came out. My dad went on, still calm, but with a bit more edge now. "I'm happy to refund your last visit, and we'll consider this matter closed. But I'd like to ask you not to return here. Our staff deserves to work without harassment, and our guests deserve a place where people don't cause scenes." Her friend finally spoke up, quietly. "Maybe we should go." Karen stood there for a second longer, clearly trying to figure out what power play she had left. But when she realized there were no cards left in her hand, she turned and stormed out again, this time without a word. Once they were gone, my dad and I looked at each other and just started laughing. "You'd think people like that would know when to quit," he said, "but they never really do." We thought that was the end of it, again, and for a few weeks it was. But then we got another call, this time from a man claiming to be a lawyer, representing a client who was mistreated at your establishment. He wouldn't say who he represented, but the message was clear. Karen wasn't done. My dad kept it simple. "We have surveillance footage, we have witnesses, and we're not intimidated by empty threats," he told him. The lawyer never called back. Word eventually got around town. We didn't go spreading it, but a few regulars who had witnessed her outbursts told their friends, and those friends told theirs. Within a month, it seemed like everyone knew the story. We didn't even need to explain anything anymore. People would just shake their heads when the topic came up and say things like, "That woman really thought she could lie her way into free food and control of the restaurant?" It became one of those small-town tales that got passed around in whispers and chuckles. The lady who tried to fake being the owner's wife, the woman who picked a fight with the wrong family. It never turned into a full-blown scandal, but it definitely earned her a reputation. And honestly, I felt proud. Not because we humiliated her, not because we won anything, but because we stayed calm, we stayed respectful, we let the truth speak for itself. And in the end, that was enough. After the dust settles and her threats fizzled out, life at the restaurant returned to normal. Or at least as normal as it could get after being the main characters in our town's favorite story of the month. People would come in just to joke about it. Any new fake wives today? Or is the owner's real wife working today? It became a running gag. My fiancée, who, again, is the actual owner's daughter, found it hilarious. One evening, she came in after class and asked, deadpan, "Should I start wearing a badge that says legit owner's wife so no one else tries to claim the title?" We all laughed. My dad even joked about putting a little sign on the front window, "No fake spouses allowed." But then something unexpected happened. A few weeks later, a woman walked in who looked oddly familiar. She wasn't dressed like the last two times, no more smug grin or overdone attitude. Just jeans, a plain shirt, and a look of discomfort written all over her face. And behind her, her son, the same boy who had run wild through the restaurant not long ago, now walking quietly behind her. She stepped up to the counter, glanced at me, and gave the smallest nod. "I'd like to speak to Joe," she said softly. I studied her face. There was no heat in her tone, no venom in her stare, just tired eyes and maybe a hint of regret. I called my dad from the back, unsure of what this was about. When he came out and saw her, he paused, then nodded once. "Come with me," he said, leading her toward the side of the restaurant near the office. I didn't eavesdrop, but I'll be honest, I wanted to. After a few minutes, they both returned. My dad's face was unreadable, but he looked calm. She turned to me and gave a slight bow of the head. "I'm sorry," she said. Just that. 2 words. Then she left with her son. My dad told me later, she said she got carried away, that she was embarrassed and trying to impress someone she knew. She didn't mean for it to go so far. I shrugged. "So, what now?" "Nothing," he said. "She apologized. That's enough." And you know what? He was right. Sometimes people mess up. They try to be someone they're not. They let pride or insecurity drive them to do ridiculous things. And sometimes they realize it too late, but still come back to make it right. That's a rare thing these days. From then on, she never came back as a customer. But every now and then, I'd see her around town. She'd nod politely, sometimes with a small smile. No drama, no fake claims, just a quiet reminder that even people who act outrageous can grow. But what really stuck with me was how my dad handled the whole thing. He never yelled, never raised his voice, never fought fire with fire. He stayed calm, he stayed grounded. He let the truth speak louder than any outburst ever could. And in doing so, he taught me something valuable. Dignity doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand firm. Now, every time I see someone losing their cool in public, whether it's over a coupon or a table or the temperature of their coffee, I remember this story. I remember how quick people are to puff up and pretend. And I remember how powerful it can be to simply hold your ground, speak the truth, and let them run out of steam on their own. My fiancée and I still laugh about it sometimes. She'll say things like, "If anyone ever tries to steal my title again, I'm showing them the wedding ring and the family group chat." It became one of those memories we keep tucked in our pockets, not because it was dramatic or awful, but because it reminded us who we are. That we're not here to entertain someone's delusions or play into their fantasies. We're here to work, to live, to love, and to protect what's ours, respectfully. And to that boy, the one who ran wild and got caught in the middle of his mom's charade, I hope he grows up knowing better. I hope he remembers that there's more strength in humility than in any tantrum. Because one day, he might find himself standing on the other side of the counter, and maybe, just maybe, he'll handle it with grace. As for us, business is good. The regulars still come in, and the staff still jokes about Karen the Pretender from time to time, but that's all it is now. A funny story from the past. One that reminds us that sometimes the wildest moments in life don't come with explosions or fanfare. They come with a raised voice, a wild claim, and someone pretending to be your mother-in-law. There's something timeless about the lesson in this story, because no matter how old we get, we've all met someone who tries to puff themselves up by pretending to be more than they are. Whether it's entitlement, insecurity, or a desperate need for attention, some people think they can lie their way into respect. But true respect isn't demanded, it's earned. This story reminds us that dignity doesn't need drama. It shows us the quiet strength of staying calm when someone else is loud, of choosing truth over spectacle. The young man didn't lash out. His father didn't retaliate. They stood their ground with grace and let the facts do the talking. In a world that often rewards outrage, it's refreshing to see that honesty, kindness, and patience still win in the end. And perhaps the most important part, that even people who behave badly can learn, reflect, and apologize, if given the chance. Have you ever had to stand your ground against someone making bold, false claims? How did you handle it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that speak to the heart. The air was crisp, and the trees had just begun to bloom. Emily would have loved this time of year. She always said spring felt like a reset, like the world got a second chance. As Sarah passed the local bookstore, she paused at the window. Inside was a display of journals and sketch pads, bright with color and promise. It hit her all at once. She hadn't created anything since Emily died. Not a single painting, not even a pencil sketch. Her brushes sat dry, tucked away in the closet. She used to paint every weekend, sometimes late into the night. Emily would sit beside her, feet tucked under a blanket, offering ideas or just humming quietly to whatever music was playing. That night, Sarah went into her small art room and pulled the covers off her supplies. The familiar scent of acrylic paint and wood shavings filled the air. She lit a candle, played one of Emily's favorite playlists, and sat down in front of a blank canvas. She didn't think, she just started. Color flowed. Shapes emerged. Her hand moved with instinct, guided by grief, love, and memory. The painting that formed wasn't planned. It was raw, emotional, filled with jagged lines and soft swirls. When she stepped back, she saw two figures, abstract but unmistakable, standing in the center of a storm, holding on to each other. She named it Still Here. The next morning, she sent a photo of the painting to Rebecca with a short message. Thought you might want to see. Thank you for bringing her back to me, even in pieces. Rebecca replied moments later. She would be proud. I am too. 2 days later, Diane called again. Jeremy's gone, she said bluntly. Sarah's breath caught. What do you mean gone? He didn't show up for questioning. And now no one knows where he is. His phone's off. His apartment's empty. He's vanished. Sarah felt her knees go weak. She gripped the back of a chair for balance. They're filing a bench warrant, Diane continued. Which means he's now officially wanted, but it complicates everything. Can they still charge him? If they can find him, but until then he's just out there. Sarah sat down slowly. Her hands were cold. So he runs, and that's it? He gets to disappear? Not forever, Diane said. Men like that always slip up eventually. Sarah didn't reply. She just sat, staring at the floor. That night, sleep evaded her again. She tossed and turned, haunted by dreams of empty rooms and closed doors. At one point, she thought she heard Emily's voice, soft, almost like a whisper. Don't let him win, Mom. The next morning, Sarah woke with a strange calm. She couldn't control where Jeremy went or how long it would take for justice to catch up to him. But she could control how she remembered her daughter and how she lived from this point forward. She began volunteering at the local community center's art program, working with young women in recovery, teaching them how to channel pain into expression. She brought extra sketch pads and paint supplies, always making sure there was more than enough to go around. One of the girls, Mia, reminded her of Emily. Same spark in her eyes, same quiet defiance. One afternoon, Mia stayed behind after class. Did you lose someone? She asked gently. Sarah smiled faintly. Yes, my daughter. Mia nodded. I can always tell. When someone teaches like that, it comes from somewhere deep. Sarah didn't know what to say, so she just squeezed Mia's shoulder. Afterward, she walked home under the setting sun, the warm breeze brushing against her skin like a promise. Jeremy was still out there. That much hadn't changed, but neither had Emily's words, etched into her memory and into every corner of the sketchbook. If something happens to me, please don't trust him. Please. As Sarah would never forget, and she would never stop fighting, not just for Emily, but for every girl like her who never got the chance to come home. 3 months passed. The world kept turning, as it always does, but Sarah lived in a quieter orbit now. Some days were better than others. Some mornings she woke up with purpose, with something to look forward to, like teaching her weekend art sessions or going for walks with Rebecca. Other mornings, she barely made it out of bed. Grief didn't move in a straight line. It curled back on itself, looped around memories, and showed up in the smallest moments. An old voicemail, the sound of a favorite song in the grocery store, the smell of lavender shampoo. But through it all, Sarah kept going. Diane stayed in touch, though the updates became fewer and further between. Jeremy hadn't been seen or heard from. Tips came in, mostly dead ends. A sighting here, a lead there. Each one raised hopes briefly, only to leave her aching again. Then, one evening, as Sarah was closing up at the community center, her phone rang. It was Diane. They found him. Sarah didn't breathe. He was in Nevada, got picked up for a DUI. They ran his name and found the warrant. Sarah sat down slowly. Her heart was racing. So now what? They'll extradite him back here. He'll be questioned. It won't be easy, Sarah. I want to be honest with you. There's still no physical evidence tying him to what happened that night. But Emily's letters, they'll help, Diane said. But this will come down to what they can prove. The DA's reviewing everything again. Sarah nodded. I understand. But now that he's in custody, Diane added, he doesn't get to disappear anymore. That night, Sarah stood in front of her latest painting. It wasn't finished yet. A large, sweeping canvas of a woman standing on a cliff's edge, wind in her hair, storm clouds behind her, sunrise ahead. She added the final strokes, gold and amber stretching toward the sky. And in the corner, in faint pencil, she wrote, "Keep going." 2 weeks later, she got the call she'd almost stopped hoping for. He's being charged, Diane said, with financial exploitation and with obstruction related to Emily's death. They couldn't get him for everything, but it's a start. Sarah didn't cry, she didn't yell or shake, she just whispered, "Thank you." In court, she sat quietly as Jeremy was led in. He looked smaller than she remembered from the photos, tired, older, disheveled, but still that same cold arrogance in his eyes. He never looked her way. She watched as the letters were entered into evidence, watched as the sketchbook was carefully presented page by page. The room was silent when they reached the folded drawing, the one of mother and daughter under the tree. It hung in the air like a prayer. The judge read through statements. Diane testified. Rebecca spoke bravely, her voice steady, even as her hands trembled. Sarah declined to speak directly. She'd written a letter instead. It was read aloud by the prosecutor. My daughter was not perfect. She struggled. She made mistakes, but she was trying. She was finding her way. And someone saw that hope in her and used it, abused it, took advantage of her trust, of her heart, of her silence. That someone needs to be held accountable, not just for her, but for every woman who loved and lost and never got to say goodbye. The courtroom remained still. Jeremy was sentenced to 3 years, not for everything, not for what truly mattered most. But it was something, a record, a name in the system, a warning to anyone else who might cross his path. And for Sarah, it was enough. Not justice, exactly, but acknowledgement, recognition of what Emily had gone through, of what she had tried to say in the only ways she could. After the sentencing, Sarah stepped outside the courthouse and took a deep breath. The sky was overcast, but light broke through the clouds in thin golden streams. Rebecca stood beside her, linking their arms. You okay? She asked. Sarah nodded slowly. I think I'm beginning to be. That evening, she lit a candle by Emily's photo. She sat in silence for a long time, listening to the soft flicker of the flame. Then she pulled out the sketchbook, flipped to the drawing beneath the tree, and whispered, I kept going, baby, just like you asked. In the following weeks, Sarah poured her energy into the art program. She expanded it, started a foundation in Emily's name, one that offered scholarships and support for women in recovery who wanted to explore healing through creativity. Mia became the program's first scholarship recipient. She was beaming the day she received it, holding the certificate like it was made of gold. You changed my life, she told Sarah. Sarah smiled gently. No, you changed your own. I just held the light for a little while. Months passed, and the foundation grew faster than Sarah had ever imagined. She named it the Still Here Project, after the painting she created the night she found her way back to herself. Donations came in steadily, many from strangers who had read about her story in the local news or heard about Emily's letters from Diane's contacts in the recovery community. Sarah was invited to speak at local events, sometimes nervously reading from note cards, other times speaking straight from the heart. She never glamorized what happened. She never tried to make it neat or easy. She just told the truth. About her daughter, about grief, about the slow, painful process of finding purpose again. One afternoon, after a panel discussion at a community college, a woman approached her quietly. She looked to be in her late 50s, with streaks of silver in her hair and tired eyes. "Your daughter's story," she began, her voice catching. "It reminded me of mine. I lost my son in '96, heroin. I never talked about it publicly, but hearing you today, it felt like permission." Sarah reached out, took her hand, and held it gently. "You don't need permission," she said softly. "You just need a place." The woman nodded, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. That moment stayed with Sarah for weeks. It was a strange thing, how grief could isolate people so easily, and yet, at the same time, how it could be the thread that tied them together. Everyone had a story, a scar. The Still Here project became that place, where silence didn't win, and people like Emily were remembered not just for how they died, but for how they lived. On what would have been Emily's 24th birthday, Sarah held a memorial art night at the community center. They brought in candles, soft music, blank canvases, and bowls of bright pastels. People came from all over, recovering addicts, mothers, daughters, teachers, old friends. There was no ceremony, no speeches, just creation. Some painted flowers, some wrote poems. One woman simply sat and traced her hand over and over, filling a canvas with gentle repetition. Sarah painted too. Her canvas was soft and blue and glowing with light. In the center, she wrote, "You were never a burden. You were becoming." Afterward, they pinned every piece of art to the walls, creating a tapestry of hope and healing. Sarah stood in the middle of the room and felt something loosen in her chest. It was the first birthday of Emily's that didn't end in tears. Later that evening, after the last canvas had been hung and the music had faded, she found a small note folded and left on the supply table. It read, "I was going to use tonight to say goodbye. Instead, I decided to stay. Thank you." No name, no signature, just those few words. And yet, they echoed louder than anything else that night. Sarah kept the note tucked into Emily's sketchbook. It reminded her of why she started all of this. The following week, Diane dropped by the center unexpectedly. She looked tired, but satisfied. "I wanted to give you an update," she said as Sarah poured them both a cup of tea. "They officially closed the case on Jeremy. No new charges, but he's serving his full sentence. And with everything on record, he'll be flagged the minute he steps out of line again." Sarah nodded slowly. "That's more than I hoped for when this started." Diane studied her for a long moment. "You've done something remarkable, you know. A lot of people would have stayed broken." "I almost did," Sarah admitted. "Some days I still feel like I'm right on the edge." Diane smiled faintly. "You're still standing. That counts for something." As they talked, Sarah looked around the room. The shelves filled with donated art supplies, the bulletin board covered in progress photos and success stories, the soft hum of laughter from the hallway where a new class was gathering. Emily would have loved it here. She would have walked these halls barefoot, paint on her elbows, arms wide open to everyone who needed a place to feel safe. Sarah often imagined what her daughter would say now, what she'd think of the girls who whispered "thank you" on their way out the door, or the paintings signed with initials and small hearts in the corner. She never got the ending she wanted. But she got something else. She got to turn the pain into something living, something kind, something brave. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, Sarah took a walk through the park where she and Emily used to sit on Sundays with hot coffee and notebooks. There was a new mural painted along the side of the maintenance shed, one she hadn't noticed before. It was vibrant, full of wild color and movement. Two women, abstract and free, holding each other through a windstorm. In the corner, barely visible in the swirling paint, was a single signature, 4E, M. Sarah stopped and stared. She didn't know who had painted it. Maybe one of the girls from her class, maybe a stranger, but it didn't matter. Emily was still here, in the colors, in the brushstrokes, in the hands that created beauty from broken places. A few weeks later, Sarah received an invitation in the mail. It was handwritten, in careful, looping script, and sealed with a small gold sticker. It was from Mia. "Dear Ms. Phillips," it began, "I'm graduating from the recovery program next month. I'll be speaking at the ceremony, and I'd be honored if you came. You helped me find myself again. I wanted you to be there when I walked into my new life." Sarah read the note twice, her fingers brushing over the words like they were fragile glass. She had watched Mia transform over the last year, from a closed-off, angry young woman into someone blooming with quiet strength. And now she was stepping into the world again, not as who she'd been, but as who she'd chosen to become. The day of the ceremony, Sarah wore a simple navy dress, one Emily had once called her quiet power dress, and tucked a pressed daisy into her notebook as a tribute to her daughter's favorite flower. The event was held at a small hall filled with folding chairs, fairy lights, and soft music. Family and friends sat in warm clusters, holding each other's hands, wiping away tears. On a low stage, the graduates stood one by one, sharing pieces of their journey. When Mia took the microphone, her voice wavered at first. "I used to think I was a lost cause," she began. "I thought I'd messed up too much, burned too many bridges, but someone handed me a paintbrush instead of a lecture. She didn't try to fix me, she just gave me space." She looked directly at Sarah, and that's when I started believing I was still worth something. The room was silent for a moment, then applause broke out. Quiet at first, then louder, until even Mia was laughing through her tears. After the ceremony, Mia hugged her tightly. "I'm thinking of going into art therapy," she said. "Maybe start with the younger girls. They don't always know how to say what's wrong, but they can draw it." Sarah smiled. "That sounds perfect." She didn't tell her, but in that moment, something inside Sarah clicked into place. It wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about all of them, all the Emilys out there, struggling to be seen, to be believed, to be loved even when they were at their lowest. When she got home that night, she found herself digging through an old box of Emily's things again. There were postcards from high school friends, a crumpled concert ticket, Polaroids of sunsets and half-eaten pizza slices. But at the very bottom was something she hadn't seen before, a sealed envelope addressed to, "For when you're ready, Mom." Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single page. "Mom, if you're reading this, I hope it means I didn't make you give up. I hope it means you're still painting, still going to the beach even though you hate the sand, still singing off key in the car. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please know this. None of it was because I didn't love you. I just couldn't love myself yet. I don't know how this ends. I'm scared every day, but I'm trying, and I hope you're proud of me, even when I fall. You're the strongest person I've ever known. Don't let my story stop yours. Love, always, Emily." Sarah sat in the middle of the floor, holding the letter to her chest. She didn't cry, not right away. Instead, she breathed, deeply, slowly, and with every breath, she felt the tiniest shift, like a weight lifting or a wound beginning to close. She whispered, "I'm still going, baby, just like you wanted." Later that week, she added a new page to the Still Here Project's website. It was a quiet corner, just a photograph of Emily's sketchbook and a few lines of text. "If you're scared, if you're hurting, if you feel invisible, come in. We'll hold space for you. You're still here, and you matter." The messages began to trickle in, one from a woman in her 60s who had lost her sister, another from a father trying to reconnect with his estranged daughter. Some came with stories. Some came with drawings. One message simply said, "Thank you for not letting her be forgotten." Sarah responded to every single one. She didn't have all the answers, but she had something else, an open heart, and a space where pain could be softened into something beautiful. And in that quiet corner of the internet, Emily's voice lived on, not in the tragedy of how her life ended, but in the legacy of what she left behind. Not just the warnings, not just the wounds, but the light, the color, the courage to begin again. A full year had passed since Sarah opened that door and found Rebecca standing there, holding a box that would change everything. 12 months of peeling back memories, facing the sharp edges of truth, and walking through a grief that never really left, but no longer ruled her. On the anniversary of Emily's passing, Sarah decided to spend the day in the quietest way she knew how. No ceremony, no candles, no speeches. Just her, a canvas, and a blank stretch of time. She set up her easel in the backyard, where spring had begun to bloom again, green buds pushing through branches, the faint scent of jasmine on the breeze. Emily would have liked this day. She would have spread out a picnic blanket, made a playlist, and dragged Sarah into the sunlight, whether she wanted to or not. Sarah mixed her paint slowly, carefully, no rush, no plan, just the motion of color meeting canvas. She painted without thinking, without judging, just letting the feeling guide her. And by the time the sun dipped low on the horizon, the painting had taken shape, a wide open road flanked by wildflowers stretching into the distance. She smiled faintly. It wasn't a goodbye, it was a beginning. That evening, she received a call from a local high school. The art teacher had heard about the Still Here project and asked if Sarah would come speak to their students. They had started a support group for teens navigating grief, trauma, and recovery. The kids wanted someone who understood, someone real. Sarah hesitated at first. She wasn't sure if she was the right person, but then she remembered Emily's letters, the courage it took to write them, the hope hidden in every page. She said yes. The day of the visit, she stood in front of 20 students in a classroom painted with murals and lined with half-finished projects. Some kids looked down at their desks. Others watched her closely, guarded but curious. "I'm not here to lecture you," she began softly. "I'm just here to tell you a story. One about my daughter, and one about what happens when someone believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself." She told them about Emily, about the art, the sketchbook, the letters, the loss. But she also told them about what came after, about the girls in her program, about Mia, about the note that simply said, "I decided to stay." When she finished, the room was silent. Then a boy in the back raised his hand. He was maybe 16, skinny, with sleeves pulled over his hands. "My brother died last year," he said. "Overdose. No one really talks about him anymore. It's like he got erased." Sarah's throat tightened. "He's not erased," she said gently. "You remembering him? That keeps him alive. And saying his name out loud, that's the bravest thing you can do." He nodded, eyes shining. After the talk, a few students came up to her. One girl handed her a small drawing, 2 figures sitting under a tree, just like the one in Emily's sketchbook. Below it, she'd written, "Still Here." Sarah framed it and placed it on the shelf beside Emily's photo. Everywhere she went now, people seemed to carry pieces of her daughter, without even knowing it. In sketches, in words, in quiet acts of kindness. The ripples of one life, one brave, messy, beautiful life, moving outward in ways Sarah had never expected. Months later, the foundation received a grant to expand into other cities. Sarah traveled to the first partner site, a small women's shelter in Portland, where they launched a pilot program for art-based recovery. There, she met a woman named Lila. Lila had been clean for 9 months. She didn't talk much during the first few sessions, always choosing the seat near the window. But one afternoon, she brought in a charcoal drawing that took Sarah's breath away. It was of a girl, arms outstretched, hair wild in the wind, standing on a cliff as light broke through the sky. "It's called Becoming," Lila said. Sarah touched the edge of the paper. "She reminds me of someone," she whispered. Lila smiled faintly. "She's all of us." Sarah returned home with the drawing carefully packed in her bag. She hung it in the front lobby of the foundation's main office with a small plaque beneath it. "Donated by a survivor, for all the girls still finding their way." As she looked around at what had grown from the pain, dozens of students, community events, murals, letters, and healing, Sarah finally understood what Emily had meant when she wrote, "Don't let my story stop yours." It hadn't. It had sparked something bigger, not just survival, not just grief, but grace, love, light. On the 2nd anniversary of Emily's death, Sarah stood alone at her daughter's favorite lake, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. She scattered them across the water, watching as they floated gently into the distance. "I miss you every day," she whispered, "but you're still here, sweetheart, in every color, every page, every heart that refuses to give up." She stayed there until the wind picked up, then turned toward the path home. Her phone buzzed, a message from Mia. "Big news. The university accepted me. I start in the fall. I'm going to help people, just like you did for me." Sarah smiled. She looked up at the sky, glowing with the last golden light of day, and whispered, "She's going to be okay." Then she took a deep breath, stepped forward, and kept going, just like Emily would have wanted. This story is a powerful reminder that grief doesn't end, it transforms. When Sarah lost her daughter Emily, she was thrust into a world of unanswered questions, private battles, and aching silence. But through art, community, and quiet acts of courage, she found a way to turn unimaginable loss into lasting impact. For many of us, life brings seasons of sorrow, moments when we're left wondering how to carry on without the ones we love. What this story teaches us is that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering in ways that bring light instead of darkness. Sarah couldn't save Emily, but she honored her memory by creating space for others to survive, to heal, and to speak their truths without shame. No matter your age, it's never too late to find purpose in pain or meaning in memory. And sometimes, simply telling your story or listening to someone else's is the most powerful thing you can do. If this story moved you, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced something similar? Leave a like to support stories that matter, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt family journeys like this one. We're listening. We're still here with you.